Good evening, everyone. So we're back for day 3 of the Zambarau crossbody bag. That's a tongue twister. And day 3, we actually complete the bag. So on day 1, we talked about prepping, interfacing, and additional things you needed to do to be able to move forward to day 2, which is where we constructed the exterior. So the exterior of the bag, there were a lot of different pieces. We also did not just the exterior, but we did the straps and the tabs necessary to make the bag. So just to review with you real time so that you know exactly what we worked on, I will show you the bag in a few minutes. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Catherine Maldonado, and I'm the owner and curator of Sew Your Bag, which is a subscription box service for beginner and aspiring bag makers. Bag makers. So you will hear me throughout reference the box and say that you may have gotten this in your kit or that in your kit, but the box actually contains everything you need to make a bag. And this particular pattern, it included everything you needed, the pattern, all of the interfacing and all the hardware that we're using. So it's one complete kit that you can just open up and start working on. So let's get started on day 3 and a little bit of what we covered yesterday on the exterior of the bag. So this is our exterior. This is actually the entire bag that came in the kit. Of course, it wasn't already made. We've been making it over the course of the last 2 days. And what we did yesterday is we constructed this entire exterior. We did our flap. We also partially installed this little twist lock. So we installed that portion of it. So that's open and we cut that open. The entire strap was constructed. And then we also constructed our strap as well as our tabs on the side. So that's the exterior of the bag. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to work on putting our lining together. So for today, what will happen is we will construct this lining, which has a recessed zipper pocket, a recessed zipper closure, I should say. So you can see that's the lining. And in the lining, I do not have any pockets of any sort. So if you have pockets that you happen to like a slip pocket, or you may even have a zippered pocket or a zipper pocket with facing, you can definitely do that to your bag and add that on the lining. Hello, Miss Arnetta. Welcome back for day 3. Thank you so much for hanging in with me yesterday on day 2. So I'm hoping to see maybe a bag from you. Um, but I'm hoping to see you always do something interesting, which is, sometimes you use the fabric, sometimes you don't. But whatever you make, I love it. So thank you so much for joining me. So we will also be on the inside. We will be constructing this portion. And at the very end, we will be adding our little zipper end here. So as I mentioned, everything was in the box or the kit. So the twist lock, the strap connectors, the tri-glide, everything, the zipper end. And Zambarau means purple. And I never said that, I don't think, throughout the course of the last 2 days. So the theme of this box was kind of like wrapped around the fabric choice, which was purple. And so we are using waterproof canvas and some purple Ankara fabric. So let's get started. So I'm going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And this was our exterior of the bag that we made. We also added this slip pocket, and there was a magnetic closure in here. So we added that as well. And this happens to also have a zipper pocket, which is fully lined. All right. So that's where we left off. Today, before we start constructing the lining, what I will be doing is I will be adding my flap, which I also constructed yesterday. So I will be adding my flap to the bag, which means I have to put the second portion of my twist lock in. So I'm going to grab that right now. And this is the twist part. This is the part that actually rotates, that actually twists. So I'm going to need that. That comes with a washer or a back plate, which should look something like this. And then in addition to that, we will also need our little tabs that we constructed. And these are the 2 tabs that I will need. So I'm going to first of all put on my twist lock. And then what I will do is I will base stitch in my flap as well as my little tabs right here. Okay. So let's get started doing that. So I am going to lay my bag totally flat like this. And you want to measure between, that's the entire front. So I'm measuring from this point to this point in the front. In the directions there are measurements. I will measure across, and what I want to do is make sure I get the center. You can also take your bag, and I'm just going to fold it with the foam in there as well. And I'm going to match up those seams. So you can also take it, match the seams like this, make sure they're totally matched, pull it out, and I'm just going to give it a little snip right there. You can use a marking tool like a erasable pen. I'm just going to take a snip that's inside my seam allowance so I won't see it. And then what I'm going to do is I will measure down from that center mark. So I normally stick the center mark on a line. So it's any line as long as it's centered. And I flatten it and make sure it's totally even across. Once I've done that, I'm just going to move it over just a tad. Once I've done that, I'm just going to weight it down a little bit for myself. So I'm going to stick something maybe right here, my clip jar. And I want to measure from that center mark down. So when it comes to placement, you will find on page, I'm going to go back a page or two from yesterday. This is going to be on page 32 if you're with me. And I'm going to measure down. So I want to make sure it's straight going across and it's also centered top to bottom around that mark. And it is. All right. Once I'm done that, I will be using a chalk liner so that I can see this. And I'm going to measure down and I'm going to draw a line. And that line that I'm going to draw will be the placement for my prongs. Now, what happens when I do this is I'm going to insert it from the front, but I have to put the prongs, the plate on the back. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to draw a horizontal line. And if I get this right, I'm going to use my chalk liner. And I can rub this off later. So make sure you use something erasable. And I draw a line. So hopefully you will be able to see that. You see that chalk line? I do that chalk line on there. I already know where the center is. So the center line is right here. So I can draw a little T shape. And that will be my center line. I'm then going to take my twist lock, and I'm just going to open the prongs, and you're going to get them as straight as possible. They don't have to be perfectly straight, but you want to get them as straight as possible. So hopefully you'll see that as well. And then what happens, I'm going to use that chalk line, and I'm going to take my plate, and I do this in 2 steps, kind of. I center. So this plate has a number of different holes. To make it even, I actually have to center it on the little bar in the middle. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And to get it center, I have to center it on that little bar. Depending on what kind of plate you get for your hardware, you can look at the center mark and get that on there. For me, it is in between those 4 holes. So I have to count 4 over and then the little bar in between. I'm going to place the plate itself so that the line is at the bottom, but it's centered. Just like that. The 2 steps that I do is I then take these and I try to figure out where does this align? Where do these prongs align so that they're centered? So they're going to align, for me, they will align with these last 2. So I'm going to count over 1, make a mark, and then count over 1 again and make another mark. So they're 1 in from the end. So it's not this one, it's the one next to it. And that's something you'll have to do depending on the lock you use, if you use a different lock. So once again, I'm just going to put the plate on here. I know exactly where those should go. So I'm going to use my chalk liner and I'm just going to fill it in. You can use, if it's easier for you, you can use a permanent pen for this. And that's because you're going to cut that hole. You're going to put a slit in there and you won't see it. So I'm just marking in, and this is an erasable pen, by the way. Okay, so I drew those 2 lines. Hopefully I got them right. And once again, if you open your prongs and get them as flat as possible, just find the ones that are closest. You don't want the prongs bent in. You'd prefer to have them a little bent out. So I'm just going to double check, make sure I can see my lines on here. And I can. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut an opening right there. I'm holding the foam, so you want to make sure you go straight through the foam. So there's foam in this, you want to make sure you cut straight through. So I'm holding the foam. Once again, your line should be above that horizontal line. Sorry. I think my bag was upside down. It's 3. And I'm just going to remeasure this one more second because it does look lower than the other one. And I want to make sure I give you the right information. Okay, so hold on. Let me just measure down. Okay. So yeah. You want to make sure also that this piece here is unfolded. So when it measures down, it should be inside. So I'll show you on this one what I mean. So I actually folded this down when I'm done, but when you're measuring it, make sure it's up, and then you're going to measure down and the center mark should come there. And on mine, it does. It comes in the right place. It just looked different than I thought it would. Okay, so now I'm ready to cut that hole. I'm going to get my scissor. And I have, these are pointy scissors. These are Kai scissors, I believe, Kai. And I just open it slightly. I put one point to one end of my slit and the other point to the other end. And because they're pointy, I can just push down into my material. Watch your fingers on the back. So I push down and then I just close the scissors, and that's how I get my slit. All right, so in there is a slit that I can put that through. The other thing you can do is you can get a seam ripper and you can go down and up. So I can take my seam ripper, I can put it in the bottom or the top, poke it straight down, then pull it back and bring it up like a sewing needle through the top. So it's sort of like hanging out there. All right, so that's the fabric. And then when you push, remember there's foam in there, it'll make another hole. So that's another way. The reason I go down and up is so that I make sure I don't overcut that hole. So the next thing I will do is I will take my twist lock and I will stick the prongs through the holes that I created. So I just have to make sure I get that in there. Now this plate actually goes to the back. So we want to stick the prongs from the front to the back, just like that. And for some reason I didn't get this hole, so I'm gonna cut it again. You should put some fray check if you're using cotton, just to make sure, this is fray check, just to make sure that it doesn't unravel, so you can put that right on the holes. I'm not going to do it, but I do advise you to. Okay, so now it went through and it's totally flat. I'm then going to flip it over. I'm going to grab a piece of foam. That's just so I don't scratch it. My prongs are coming out there. I am going to add another reinforcement piece like I did yesterday, but because it's foam, I'm not going to iron it on. I'm just going to draw 2 marks on this and cut the 2 holes. So that's my piece of reinforcement. Once again, it can be vinyl, it can be waterproof canvas, it can be any scrap that you have. This happens to be Decoville Heavy. I then take that, fold the long sides together, take a snip to cut those holes open. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to place it over the prongs as reinforcement. I do not need to iron this. It'll work totally fine without ironing it. So I'm just pushing that through there just like that. It's a little bright in here. Okay, and then I will take my plate and I will place it over that, remembering the placement of which holes I put them in. So They're going right in there to those 2 holes on the end. And then I will bend these prongs in. So make sure to push down so it can get as tight as it can. So I'm just using my hand. You can use a screwdriver or, something like that if you want to. These are pretty easy, so I bent them into the middle. Once I've done that, I'm going to grab a piece of Gorilla Tape and I'm going to place it right over that just to help it. And then my lock, my twist part, the front part is in there. So now if I put my flap over it and I twist it, that's how it stays closed, just like that. All right. Once again, when we're done, we will be folding this over and it'll be right there, nice and neat. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to attach the flap to the back and I want it to be centered on the pocket. So your piece should be right side up. You're going to take your flap. I'm going to fold it in half, just like this, and I'm going to mark the center by taking a little snip in the middle. Just right there. There will be a 1/2 inch seam at the top, so let's keep it in there. It's pretty big. All right. And over here, I also want it centered. So I'm just going to fold this seam to seam. Remember your pocket's there, so it may be a little bit thicker than you are used to. Just make sure the seams line up. You can always measure it and then mark the center as well. But I'm going to take a snip right there. Now, once I've done that and I know where this center is on the back, I'm going to take my flap. I'm going to place it wrong side up or right side down. So my waterproof canvas is the wrong side. This is the right side, and my pieces will be right sides together. I will match up those little notches or snips, and I will clip this in place. I'm then going to go to the sewing machine, and I will be base stitching this in, and I'm going to base stitch it in at 1/4 inch because I'm folding over a half an inch. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch stitch just to base this in. The basting stitch is going to be a stitch length of 6 or a long stitch, right? Whatever stitch you don't care about if you have to rip it out, how much work it's going to be. And then what you will do is along with that, we're going to stitch it at that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to just tuck this. So I'm going to just tuck this right into the bag here. I'm just tucking that down so it's out of the way. And then I'm just going to sew across once again at a 1/4 inch. For me, it's the edge of my presser foot. And I will back tack. So I'm going to lower my presser foot, lower your needle, and then you're just going to stitch across. And I'm actually going to turn it upside down because it'll make it easier to sew. I forget my machine is a flatbed, so I don't have I'm able to drop it for like a sleeve. So sometimes a little bit more maneuvering than one of those. If I don't have the free arm where I can drop it. So I'll just stitch it from the inside. Back tack at the beginning of the end. I normally like stitching it from the other way because I can actually see what's happening this way. Sometimes it's hard to see if I caught what I needed to catch. So. Yeah, so you see right there, I didn't catch it. That's why I stitch it from the top. So I will turn my bag inside out temporarily to get this stitched in. All right, so I'm just going to turn my bag inside out very quickly, and then I will stitch it from the wrong side. because then I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm going to tuck my flap inside here, and then I will clip it in place and stitch it. If you have a free arm, it'll be easier for you to do it. Anybody who has a straight stitch machine knows exactly, what my struggle is over here with this. Okay. So now I can see everything perfectly, and I'll be able to stitch going across. So once again, 1/4 inch stitch length of 6 or a very long stitch length. I am going to back tack at the beginning and the end. And what's nice is that won't be fiddly when we start putting things together. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my tabs. So that was these 2 pieces for my strap, and the strap will get installed at the end. So I'm just going to, I'll leave this just like this. I'm going to take these, I'm going to put them inside. Your bag will be right side out, and I'm going to center them. Just take a look and see which side you like better. Sometimes the stitching on one side is better than the other side. So when you do your bag, and I'll show you, your bag will be right side out more than likely. So I'll turn this one right side out as well. And then what I do is I look and see which stitches. Sometimes the bobbin stitching isn't as nice as the one that comes from the top of the machine. So, from the needle side. So what I do is I look at it, and if I want the needle side, which is the prettiest stitches, to be shown on the outside, I make sure that those needle stitches are facing the bag, right? So the needle stitches, which are pretty, are facing the bag. You're then going to center it between these 2 marks. You can measure it. You can fold it in half. Hold on one second for some reason. I try to make sure I can see everybody's comments. You can fold it in half like this. And do what I did before, which is snip the center. You can mark it with a pen. Honestly, I'm not that exacting because I'm pretty good at eyeballing. And then you would take your strap and you would do the same and then snip the center. So if you need to make the marks, you can do that. Like I said, I'm pretty good at eyeballing them, but it should be centered. So I'm going to take this, center it right here on the side of the bag. My pretty side is facing my bag, or my pretty stitches. I put 2 clips because it's so small, and you'll do that. You'll then turn to the other side of the bag over here. You would mark the center, and you would do the same thing. Look for your pretty stitches. Make sure those are facing the bag, and you will clip it in place. You can always eyeball it and then come back with a ruler and then measure the distance from here to the seam and from there to the seam as well. So that's another way to do it. It's such a short piece that you can do that. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to base stitch it in at 1/4 inch. So when I'm done, my flap will be on and my tabs will be on. So this is squishy, so I'm just going to squish it down. And I'm going to back tack. So that's one, and I will do the same to the other side. Okay. So now that's done, and we can set this to the side. All right. So we have our tabs in there. All right, these are the tabs. We have our lock, so I know when I put everything together, I can twist it and close it. All right, and we can set this to the side. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our lining. Now the lining is in one piece. So it's one piece is the base part of it. And then there's a zipper closure, and then there are accent pieces. I'm going to start with the zipper closure first because I need to get the zipper done before I can actually come in and do the accent pieces and complete it. So I've interfaced the zipper closure piece. It is one piece. I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise. So the reason I do it this way is because I like to see when the zipper closes that the two pieces match at that sew line. So I will be marking what my center is. Okay. And this is the exterior. So when it's done, it will be just like that. It will be wrong sides together. Once again, waterproof canvas is the side that's not, the wrong side is the waxy side. That's the waxy side. And you can see that's a little bit darker. That's the fabric side. So that's how you know. I'm going to cut this in half. Lengthwise. And what I'm going to do is once I cut it in half is I'm just going to flip them over. So I'm going to flip it to the right and flip it to the left. The outside is really our center. So I'm going to just draw an arrow myself so I know that that's the outside, which means when I sew my zipper together and it's like this, that pattern will match. You can see it'll be a if I do it this way, it's not a continuous pattern. It's broken up. All right, but if I do it this way, then they both match. It's just a little thing about that for some reason, it's something that I like doing. And when you have a finer print pattern, you see it even more. This is a pretty big print. Also, if you're using directional fabric, it's nice to make sure that if your image is in the middle and you want it to continue left or right, that you don't have legs on one side and then the head is facing the legs because they're going in the same direction. Okay. Waterproof canvas doesn't matter as much. So all I do is do that. Okay. We're going to need our zipper. So we're going to prepare our zipper. My zipper is very long and I have the pull on there already. I need to finish this end of it so that I can lay it on that closure piece. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark. So I take both these ends are unfinished. So this is zipper by the yard. The end, so my zipper opens by pulling it down and closes by pulling it up. So the end that closes going up is the end that I'm working on. The tail end is also the end where the zipper part pulled down here is flat. So that's what I refer to as the tail end. It's flat. So I'm looking at the head and I'm going to make a mark with my chalk liner that's a 1/2 inch down. You can do an inch. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch down. And the reason I say you can do an inch, once you see what I do, you'll understand why. It's a little bit fiddly. So if you do an inch, it may be easier for you to do. All right. Once I've done that, I'm then going to grab a pin. And that's a straight pin, right? It's a sewing pin. And I'm going to fold that down in such a way that it stays. So hold on one second. My drawer is stuck under here. I guess it's time to get rid of some of these scissors. Maybe that's what it's time to do. Once I get rid of the scissors, I'll have more room in the drawer. All right, so I'm going to take a straight pin. And I'm going to take where I marked it. So there's a chalk line right here. If you pinch that chalk line between your fingers, open your zipper a little bit. Pinch that between your fingers at the 1/2 inch. You'll see that the zipper starts to bend this way, right? I'm then going to take that chalk mark that I pinched and I'm going to match it, bend the zipper down and match it so that it matches the end of my zipper tape. So I did a 1/2 inch. If you do an inch, what will happen is it will look something like that, right? So you'll have that little excess. You can cut that off later. So do whatever makes you comfortable. If this is the first time you've done it, I'm doing a 1/2 inch. I'm pinching that, and then I'm bending that fold right to the edge of the zipper teeth. And when you're done doing that, you will find that your zipper tape is right there also. So I'm just going to stick a pin in this. And there should be 3 layers of fabric. You want to stick it through all 3 layers of fabric to hold it. All right, so it'll look like that. On the other side where I marked it, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to pinch it. Once again, the zipper tape is going to fold that way. I'm just going to push it down and align that mark, that chalk line, with the edge of my zipper teeth. You'll then be able to see they're even. And I'm going to add a pin on this side. So go down and up. It should be through both layers, all 3 layers. So it'll look like that. All right. Once you're done with that, I'm now going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew right along this edge about 1/8 of an inch on either side. I'm going to sew in a particular way because I want to make sure that my zipper does not shift out of alignment. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew that. So now I'm here. I'm just going to open this up a little bit more, just like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to stick it right here, right above the pin. And if by doing that, what will happen is it will catch all 3 layers. So I'm going to do that. Remember, it's going to be 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to just stick that in there. I am going to reduce my stitch length down to about a 4. Be careful of that sharp edge. I will then lower my presser foot once you've caught that. And then you can remove the pin. So your needle should be holding that pin in place, the needle on your machine. I'm then going to stitch forward and then backwards. If you stitch backwards, you can potentially push those teeth out of alignment. But by stitching forward, you lock them in. So then it'll stay at that 90-degree angle. So I'm going to go forward a couple of stitches and then go backwards. So when you're done, you should have that 90-degree angle. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to put the needle in right above my pin. So I'm going to lower that into my zipper. This one's kind of close to the pin. So I'm then going to lower my presser foot and then pull the pin out. Once again, I'm going to go forward and then backwards. So forward a couple of stitches and then backwards. All right, so now that we've done that, you'll see if I close up my zipper, I'll show you. It should look like that without the extra thread. So that's going to be my zipper. I'm just cutting off the extra thread. And if you have any extra tape, you can cut that off as well. But that's what it'll look like. You see that when it closes? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take, just getting my lining, and these pieces that you created, remember I said that's the center, that arrow was the center. You want to make sure that that center is actually going to align with the center of your zipper. So that means I'm taking this, if I stick it to the edge, my zipper's at the top. If I stick it to the edge this way and flip it over with the arrow pointing to the left and flip it over, my center will be in the middle. So before I actually do that, what I'm going to do is I am going to stitch right sides together my zipper facing with my zipper lining. And I'm going to put them right sides together. And I'm going to sew across here at 1/4 inch. And I'm going to do that to both pieces. And you'll see why. So I'm going to take the other one. And make sure that when you do this, if you line them up, your arrows are pointing towards the center so you know which way to sew. So I'm sewing on the top here. Once again, right sides together. And I'm going to clip and I'm going to sew them at 1/4 inch. So I'll do them at the same time at the sewing machine. My stitch length, I'm going to turn down to 3. Back tack at the beginning and the end. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my zipper, grab one of these pieces, and I'm just going to grab the one where the arrow's pointing to the left, and I'm going to grab my zipper. I'm going to open this up just like that. And once it's open up, I'm going to place my zipper on the inside. I'm going to place the zipper so that it's flush, that those zipper teeth are flush against that seam at the top. I will open this. You should be able to see it. It's placed against right there where the seam is. And I'm going to just clip this in place temporarily to hold it. And you want to do that the entire length. So that my pull doesn't come off the end, I normally add a little clip over there. You can sew across it. I just add a clip so that I can pull my zipper all the way down. I'm going to do this in 2 steps. So once again, so I don't leave anything behind. You can do this if you have double-sided tape. You can use double-sided tape to hold this in place instead of the clips. Just like that. Okay. Now, one thing I want to mention, which I should have done, is we're going to fold under this edge by 1/4 inch because I want to finish the edge over there as well. So I will take a step back a second. Let's take a step back. I will draw a line here at 1/4 inch because I want you to know exactly where we are at. And you have to do it on both the lining and the top. So to do it here, it's easier if I just draw, like we've been doing, a 1/2 inch line. And then I can take this and then just fold this down to the line, which will make it 1/4 inch. And you can finger press that or iron that down. I'm just going to stick a couple of clips in it. And then because we're using waterproof canvas for the other side here, I'm going to use this chalk liner because I can see it better. And I will draw a 1/2 inch line there as well. It should be on the wrong side. Now you cannot iron this, so you will have to add clips, or you can add double-sided tape if you would like. I'm just going to fold it and add some clips because I can see the line. So I'm just going to fold this down to that line. This is a little bit harder to finger press. You can use a roller, a poly roller, or a hair marker if that helps you to press it. And I'm just going to add a couple of clips here. And we're going to catch this, so it should be fine. Okay. So now if I put these together, they're both folded in at 1/4 inch. Now, let's go back to where we were. So I open this up. I have my zipper. Right? That's going to be the center. So I'm going to take my zipper. My zipper will be right side up, and I'm laying it on my lining right here. Right? With that zipper teeth pushing in the top there. And then I will clip it in place. There's a lot of clips here, so. Now we're going to baste this. We're going to do it twice. We're going to baste it and then sew it, and then do the same to the other side. Okay, so put as many clips as you need to hold it. You can use double-sided tape, as I mentioned before. All right, so this is it open. This is my fabric. If my fabric is on the top, my zipper is right side up to the left, aligned to the left edge of my lining. I'm going to sew this at 1/8 of an inch. When I get down to here where I have the little fold over here, I'm just going to go in, and you'll be able to see it. You're going to go not quite to the end here. You want to stop about 1 stitch short. If it makes it easier, you can put I'm just going to draw this with the chalk liner, and you can put a little mark on your zipper so you know that that's the end right here. But you'll be able to feel it. So let's go to the sewing machine. 1/8 of an inch. It's going to be a stitch length of 6 because I'm basting it in. And I guess for this one, I'll actually start at that bottom because it's easier for me to sew that way. But I'm going to sew all the way to the top. So I'm starting in about 1 stitch from the end. 1 stitch from the end is what will help to tack down that fold. And you're going to do it at 1/8 of an inch, which for me is the inside right here of my presser foot. Inside right of the presser foot. So I change my stitch length, and I'm just going to base stitch. Back tack, but don't go over the edge because we don't want to see that stitch line. Okay, and your zipper teeth should fit right in there where that seam is. And you can stop when you get to the zipper teeth. All right, so now that we have that in place, and you'll be able to see that it's in place right there, I'm going to flip my exterior over it. The zipper teeth should be in there, and we're creating another type of zipper sandwich. I'm going to add some clips to hold it on the side. Once again, the center mark is right there that I drew, so I know that that's pointing to the top edge of my zipper. And then when you get to the bottom, I'm just going to add a clip because now I can see, hopefully you can see that. I can see where the end of this is and the end of this is where the fold is. And I'm just going to add a clip right here. So I know that that's my end. All right, and that's what it'll look like. All right, I'm just going to flip it over only because the cotton side is the smoother side. And I'm going to stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance now because I'm permanently putting it in. And you're going to change your stitch length down to 3 or 3.5, whatever makes you comfortable. I'm stitching right over those zipper teeth, so please make sure I'm stitching from end to end. So please make sure to take your time. You don't want to break a needle. And because I'm stitching on the lining side, I can actually see here where I stop stitching, and I will do the same. Okay, let's go back to the cutting mat and see what we did. So we've permanently stitched it in. I do have some clips on the bottom because it is holding that fold, but that's what it'll look like. We're going to open this up so we'll be able to see our zipper. But before we do that, I'm going to cut this at a 45-degree angle. Don't cut it too close to your stitch line, but you're going to leave some room in there, about 1/8 of an inch away. So right here, I'm just going to cut this at an angle. And you can really cut it. There's a stitch line here and a stitch line there. If you just cut across at a diagonal for those lines, it'll be fine. Then we're going to take it. I'm going to push from the top here and twist and pull it out of the other side. I give it a little tug right here and I push. The reason I snipped it at a 45-degree angle, once again, is to reduce the bulk like I've been doing. So whenever I cut something, it's to reduce the bulk. I then take this, you can iron it. I'm just going to push it up my exterior fabric. I will be taking clips, smooth it out, roll it in your fingers, whatever you need to do to make it happen. I will take some clips and I will clip the top raw edge. Now you can iron this on the fabric side. There should be no lining. Wrong side, which is this waterproof, should not be exposed when you're done because it's wrong sides together. And then I'm just going to fold this under and make sure that I keep that fold. So I'm going to make sure I add a clip here. You'll see that it folds very nicely here as well. For that 1/4 inch, I'm going to add a clip. Once again, I push it out. And that's what my zipper is going to look like. So that's half of my zipper. So I need to do the other half in the same way. So we'll repeat the steps. I'm going to take my pieces that I sewed together. I'm going to draw a line that's a 1/4 inch from the bottom. So where the opening is over here. Draw a line that's a 1/4 inch. Sorry, I'm going to draw a line that's a 1/2 inch and I'm going to fold it so that it's a 1/4 inch fold. So I'm using a pen, and this is a heat erasable pen. And on the waterproof canvas, I'll use chalk liner so that I can see it because it's so dark. So I'll use a chalk liner. All right. So I'll have two lines. The one that's on the fabric, I'll just fold down. And I can finger press that, use a Hera marker, use a poly roller. And I'm just going to clip those in place for right now. So I'm clipping the fold down. I'm then going to take the other one, which is on the waterproof canvas, and do the same thing. So I'm folding down to that line. Okay. And I'm going to fingernail press it. My Kai scissors actually have that metal, so I sometimes use that and do this to get it down. But you just need to get it down long enough to be able to sew it. So I've done that, and I'm going to add clips. And then the next thing I'm going to do is grab my zipper. So once again, exterior is at the top. I can see the center mark here. Remember I said to you, you want that to be on, you want this to be the center. If I took my zipper and I laid it here, that would be the zipper. That would be the center, right? So I have to lay it to the opposite side. When I did it the first time, I laid it to the left. This time I'm going to lay it to the right. I'm going to open my zipper, align those zipper teeth with that seam that I stitched, and I'm going to clip that in place. So I'm going to clip it in place here, and I'm going to do that all the way down. Once again, double-sided tape definitely helps and is suggested. So find one that's low tack. I usually include in several of the boxes, I've included score tape, which I really like. It's a low tack tape, so it holds it, just enough when I need it. I know some people who actually use an Elmer's glue stick. I don't use that because I don't want glue everywhere, even though it dries clear. But I know some people who do. They finesse it and it works. But do something that's low tack because you don't want it gumming up your needle. That's why I use score tape, which is actually a scrapbooking tape. So it's an archival scrapbooking tape. So I removed the clip and I'm going to put it back right down here where the fold is to hold it. So that's what we're doing. So we're going to stitch that 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch seam allowance, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, a number 6 stitch length. Make sure if you have to move this that you keep that fold still stays there. And remember, we're only going to go, my fingernail is right on the edge. I want to go 1 stitch away from the edge. So I just want to tack down the fold and then I can back tack. So I'm going to stay here and I will do the other half as well. Oh, there we go. I will do the other half as well. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to flip my fabric over my zipper and I'm going to align the edges here again, but it's with the fabric this time. I will need to turn my stitch length down to a 3. So I'll do that now so I don't forget. And I will clip along that edge. So one thing about the arrow in the center, it should be at the edge of the zipper with the zipper right side up. And that's how you remember the placement. If the zipper is right side up, it should be at the edge. When I get to the bottom of this, I want to make sure that I maintain that fold. So I will align, I already have a clip down here. I will align both folded edges and I will place a clip there just to hold it in place. All right. Turned my stitch length to 3. I'm now going to stitch using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I am going to go to the back. So I'm going to back tack and come forward. So I go from end to end, or end to the folded end, I should say. And go like 1 stitch onto your fabric. We're going to come back and sew that up. So don't worry about it too much. If you think it's going to rip apart, it's not. Okay. So now that I've done that, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to cut this at an angle of about 45 degrees. Once again, there's a stitch line that goes this way and one that goes down. I just cut at an angle for those 2 stitch lines. I'm then going to put my finger here, reach inside and turn it around so it's right side out. And I am giving that zipper a little bit of a tug. All right, and I can give this side a little bit more of a tug. But that's what it'll look like. Once again, I just press this down. You can close your zipper, which I suggest as well, just to make sure it's totally flat. And then I stick my finger in there and I start clipping along the top. I'm going to push this again like this. So push it away from the zipper. And I'm going to clip this fold down here next. So they should align because we made sure that we stopped at the same point. And also you make sure that, that when you're doing it, you double check it several times. So I'm just doing that. You can iron on this. Just be very gentle with it, only because there's also a zipper, and this zipper is nylon, which is a plastic and can melt. So don't leave your zipper resting on it, but you can come back in here with an iron and then just iron this and iron that. So now if I look at my zipper, it looks like that on the top. You can see that, and like that on the bottom. So I'm going to base stitch around along the top, come down and go across and back up. I know it's a base stitch, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a regular stitch to base it in. So I'm not going to be switching my stitches. I'm going to use a stitch length of 4 at 1/8 of an inch all the way around on both sides of this. So it'll be, and I normally start, somewhere on the top here, just so I can get my rhythm. And then when I get to the corner, I turn, come down, and I do 90-degree turns. So if you get that out, it should look the same on both sides. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that. Okay. So I'm starting along one of these unfinished long edges at 1/8 of an inch. I will stitch length should be a 4, and I will back tack. Given that it's 1/8 of an inch, when you get to the end here where the fold is, you're going to stop at about 1/8 of an inch. Needle down, rotate your wheel so the needle starts going up. Lift your presser foot, rotate it 90 degrees, your piece, rotate it 90 degrees this way. Drop your presser foot, and you're going to stitch down to about 1/8 at the bottom of this corner here, 1/8 of an inch. Okay, needle is down, rotate it so the needle's going up. Lift your presser foot and rotate. And then you're just going to go along this edge. For me, what's nice when I know some people use 3/8 of an inch, but for me, when I use 1/4 of an inch, this part of my presser foot actually sits right in here, which helps me to keep my stitches straight. So that's what's nice about it. I don't know if you notice, I don't use a zipper foot. I just use the same foot for everything. Eighth of an inch. Rotate so it's going up. Rotate 90 degrees. Come to the top. Okay. And we've done one side. So it's hard for you to see with the blue thread, but you can see I took 90-degree turns. Remember at those corners to make sure that you rotate your wheel so the needle is going in the up position. If you notice that you get that little joggy kind of thing, that's why. So this really, really helps. Okay, so we're done with our zipper. So that's what it'll look like when you're done. In looking at, I'll show you exactly what the ends look like so that you'll see. I'm trying to find one that's easy to see. So hopefully you can see right there. My stitches go down and then they come across this way. So it's 90 degrees, but I do not have a line that's going at a diagonal. So it's something that if you get in the habit of doing, you'll see how pretty your zippers come out. So now that that's complete, the next thing I want to do is attach it to my lining. So this is going to come together very quickly. So I'm going to take my zipper, fold the fabric in half. Don't fold the zipper in. Fold the fabric piece in half like this, and you're going to mark or snip the center. Like that. And then we're going to do the same thing here on the other side, and we're going to mark or snip the center. I'm then going to grab my accent pieces and my lining, which remember I said is one piece. I'm going to mark the center of this. Now, I believe it was on yesterday, I folded this over. So all of my accent pieces are folded over 1/2 inch and I iron them. So I'm going to fold it in half and I'm going to mark the center of this at the bottom where it's not folded. And then for later, I'm going to make sure that I unfold this, even though you think we won't see it. We're going to use it. And I'm going to mark the center there. So along the long edges, snip and mark the center. All right. And then I'm going to take this piece, which is my lining piece, which is one piece. And it's very long. So along the short edge, I'm going to mark the center. So I'm going to do that. And then I will do it the other way. I will match the long edges and mark the center on those as well. So because this is one, it's one piece of fabric, we won't have a center seam. So that's why I marked the center on the long edges as well. So to do that, you just fold the short edges together, just like this, and then you mark or snip to mark the center. So we're going to need something to align it with when we're done. Okay. So now what we're going to do is lay our lining piece right side up. Once again, waterproof canvas. It's the part that looks like fabric. I'm going to take my zipper closure. Now, one thing I will say to you is I look at my back. So I lay my fabric this way or my exterior this way, and then I flip it down so that the top is to the bottom, right? Notice my zipper is over here, so it's opening right to left. But when I put my zipper in, it opens left to right. I want them to open in the same direction, right? So this is opening this way. So when I'm in my bag, it's not opening this way on the outside and then opening from the left to the right on the inside. I want them to open. So I'm going to flip this around. So take a look at that on your piece and, make sure that they're going in the right direction. If you want them in opposite directions and that's what you like, by all means, you can do that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to match this center mark with my center clip on my lining. I will clip them in place. Just like that. I'm going to baste this in at 1/8 of an inch, a stitch length of 6. I'm then going to take my zipper, my accent piece for the top, and it doesn't really matter which, but I'm going to take the accent piece. This is right side up. I'm going to flip this right side down or wrong side up, and I will match the centers of these as well. It should be the full length of the short side. I should have mentioned that I'm using the short edge, and it should be the full length. And I did mark the center because I don't know what other fabric people will be using. So marking the center makes sure that it comes out exactly the way you want. If you're trying to align the lining in some way, So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to stitch this at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance with a stitch length of 3. Okay. So now that we've done one side, I didn't take you guys with me. I'll take you the next time, I promise. Now that we've done one side, we're going to push this up and we're going to come back and we're going to iron this. And then we're going to top stitch. But once we've done one side, we should be able to do the other side. So I'm going to turn it around this way. And this is the short edge. I'm going to open my zipper. I'm going to bring the short end to match that zipper piece. So now they're attached. I don't know if you can see that. If you're somebody who wanted to put in a slip pocket in here, a regular, a zippered pocket, you can. Use your center marks to guesstimate how far up or down that should be, the bottom. And then you could create a slip pocket if you want, or a zipper pocket within here. So now I'm going to fold this way. And I'm just clipping it in place, and I'm going to base stitch it, and then I'll do the same thing. So I'm just repeating the same steps I did earlier. So let's go to the sewing machine. Stitch length is at 6 for basting. 1/8 of an inch. We go back to the cutting mat, and we're going to take our second accent piece, lay right sides together. So it's right side against this and wrong side up. All right. I'm going to clip that in place as well. And then this is where I go back to the sewing machine. I turn my stitch length down to a 3. And then I will stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam because I'm trying to put it in there permanently. So now what I will do is I will 1/4 of an inch back tack at the beginning and the end. All right. And just to give you a point of where I'm at in the directions, for those of you who are following along, we're almost done. We're on page 30, 40. Okay, we're on page 39. So the next thing I will do is I will take my iron, and I am going to iron this open. I actually used all my pieces. I look at the bottom of my bin over here and make sure I've used all my pieces. So I'm almost done. I have just my zipper end to do. So I will take and I will iron my accent piece with the lining, with the seam allowance towards the top. So if you lay it flat, it's towards the top. Don't fold it under. Just push this piece up and push it down, finger press it, and then we're going to iron it. Now, I make sure that you leave that folded piece folded so you don't iron it flat. We need it to be folded when we're done. And I'm just going to iron this straight across. You can use steam. I turned mine off because I don't want to affect the cameras. For some reason, my camera is very sensitive. So once you've done that side, we're going to turn it around and we're going to do the same to the opposite side. So seam allowance is at the top, and we're just going to push this up. Make sure that you have this folded under right here. And then we're just going to iron on top of it. And my steam is off. It's just there has a little bit, I think there's a little bit in there. All right. So now once we've ironed that, we're going to top stitch it 1/8 of an inch with a stitch length of 4. And I'm going to top stitch it on the fabric. Don't top stitch it under the fabric, right on the fabric straight across. What the top stitching does is it helps to lock down that seam, and it also gives it a prettier finish. So I'll do that on both sides. So I will start with this side. It doesn't really matter which side you start with. Stitch length is a 4. And 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and I'm going to do the opposite side now as well. All right, so I've added the top stitching, and that'll help to hold it down. Okay, so now what we will do is I'm just going to zip it up, clip the tops here, and I just want to hold them to make them even, so I'll just clip them up here. Because now we have to do our little corner at the bottom over here where we have the center marks. Remember I said there is no seam on the bottom, so we need to mark that. So I'm on page 40, I believe. Question mark? Let's see. Yes, I still use paper. I guess I should use an iPad, but I still use paper. So what we will do is before we actually come in and mark the corner, I want to make sure that it's totally stiff. So I'm on page 40. So I'm going to take my zipper, which is right here, and I'm going to clip it, just clip it right here on the inside. So I'm going to fold it down and clip it because I don't want it in the way of my seam allowance, and I don't want it causing me any problems. So I'm just sticking a clip right here on the side of it to get it even. Okay, then I can close this up. Make sure you align these top accent pieces where the seam is, align them because we want to make sure those come out really, really pretty over there. And I'm going to put a clip. I'm then going to open up this fold line, and I'm going to clip that. So you should be stitching it with it unfolded, not folded. Flatten it down. And then what we're going to do is we will clip down the side. Add as many clips as you need. This side with the zipper is a little bit bulky, so add as many clips as you need. The other thing is you may find that there is a grip on your sewing machine because this is a waxy or a plasticky kind of feel. So just take your time or adjust your pressure foot. Adjust the pressure on your presser foot so that it's not pushing down as hard. So I'm just going to open this up, make sure this is flat at the top, and then do this side as well. Okay, I'm just going to sew down both sides. So I'm just going to stitch down at 1/4 of an inch on both sides of my lining. The stitch length for this will be a 3 or a 3.5. Once again, this is bulky, so you may have to lift like I'm doing the material to get it to lay flat. Let's back tack at the beginning and the end. All right, I'm going to flip it over to the other side. And I'm going to sew down that side, the other side here at 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm double checking that the side right here aligns. Okay, and that's done. So let's box the corner. Over here, we're going to box the corner. This is my center. And what I have you do is I have you account for the seam allowance on the side when you box the corner. So I have you, and it doesn't matter, you can do it, you know, totally square, 1 by 1, 2 by 2, whatever you want to do. I'm just accounting for the seam allowance here, so I'm going a little bit further in there on this side and than I am at the bottom. So that's just something that I did a little bit differently than what I normally do. All right. And then you can draw it in. So you can take a marking tool, draw it in. I'm just going to go for it and I'm going to cut it with the rotary cutter. But you should definitely, you know, draw it in and then cut it. I'll do that to the other one just to show you. So that's one side. So this is what I was saying. If you come in on this side, get your marking tool, draw a square, or draw, you know, according to the measurements. And then you can come back later on and you can actually cut this out with a scissor. It's probably good if you're new at this not to use a rotary cutter because you can definitely cut further than you need to cut and then you'll have a hole. All right. Now that I've done that, I'm going to leave it folded and I'm going to snip a center here so I know where to align my sides. So at the bottom, which is folded. So along these two, I actually snipped it so I know the center. I'm going to get some clips. I'm going to open my zipper because I need to get my hand in there. And then I'm just going to pull out to the side. I'm going to match the center seam with that snip that I made right there. And you can open it if you want. So you can open this. You cannot iron it because it is waterproof canvas. And you can do that. I just actually just take it and push it to either the right or the left. And then I make sure that my seam line right there matches up with my center. So that's the way I do it. And then I add a clip. And then I pull it out. Now, what you should notice is because I accounted for the seam allowance, your corner will be a little bit squarer than it may normally be if you just did it at a standard 1 by 1, 2 by 2, or 3 by 3. Okay, I'm going to turn this around this way, open it up again. Once again, you can open that seam. I just push it and match my seam line to the center. So just push it one way or the other. Okay, so when it should look like that. We're now going to sew across this using 1/4 inch seam allowance with a stitch length of 3. And I'm going to do that for this corner and for the opposite corner. Okay, so now our lining is complete. So we have our lining, which is this. And we have our bag, which is the exterior. And now we're getting ready to put everything together. So remember I said to you, this is a drop-in lining. So because it's a drop-in lining, we do not need to have any openings on the bottom. We will not be doing what's known as birthing our bag. So I'm just going to open my twist lock. I'm going to take my lining piece and I'm going to drop it in. Once again, pay attention to where your how your zipper opens to make sure it's opening the same on the front and on the back. So you want to drop it in so it's opening the same. I'm going to drop this right in here just like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my sides under. I will open the seams here. You can iron them if you want. I'm just going to open it. And then I'm going to, starting at the side, I'm going to fold the side down also. It should be a half an inch because we ironed it. And now you can see why it's so much easier if it's a half an inch and you iron it beforehand. You're not fiddling with it. You're not fiddling with it at this point. So the next thing I will do is I will then clip, and we'll come back and we'll make any adjustments, but I clip it on either side. So I'm gonna put a clip here and I put a clip on the other side as well. You want to make sure your fold lines are even at the top. And you should be folding your fabric on the back over your foam. So don't stick the fabric behind the foam. Stick it over the foam. So I did one side and then I'm going to do the other side. So that's how I normally do it, is I will do the sides and then I will come back in and fill in the front and the back. So once again, I'm going to open this seam. I'm going to fold it down. You can iron it. It should fold pretty easily because, like I said, we did iron it. You're going to fold the side piece over your foam. You're going to center it, and you can eyeball it because we're going to come back and finesse it a little bit later. I add a clip to the left and to the right to hold this in place. Now I gave you plenty of room for your strap connectors. If you wanted them shorter, you could make them shorter. Just make sure that your presser foot clears them because you don't want to get them all scratched up. Some people will put painter's tape over the hardware or cellophane wrap to make sure it doesn't get scratched because you know you do have feed dogs on your sewing machine, which are very sharp. So I'm going to fold my flap in. And when I fold my flap, I don't know if you can see that there is a center mark on this side and a center mark here. So I try to make sure that those are aligned because you can't really see it in the back. So I just try to make sure that they're aligned. Now this part will be tricky, and I will say to you, you may find it useful to add pins to that part. So I'll show you. Because you can't see the inside. You can't see where it is on the inside. So you may find it easier. So you know where the center is here and the center there. So once you have that in place, you may find it easier to just stick a pin or two. And I stick them top to bottom. It's very thick. So I normally stick them top to bottom, but because of thickness and there is waterproof canvas in there, I will stick them left to right or right to left, whichever one's easy. But I normally stick them the other way. So this will be a fiddly part. After we've done this, we're going to top stitch it. And after we top stitch it, it will be, we'll then be able to put our strap and our our zipper end in, and it'll be done. Okay. So now I'm going to do the side here. Make sure that you're getting the top fold with the top fold. So that comes with pushing your lining down into your bag. And if you ironed the flap, you can actually see the crease line, which will help you align it in the back as well. if you iron that 1/2 inch fold over. All right, so I've done the back. I'm going to do the front. Once again, I have a center mark here and here. It's easier to see it on here. I don't know if you can see that. See, there's a notch right here and there's a notch right there. So that's really what I want to align when I fold them both down. I want those notches to be aligned. So that's why I always start in the center to clip, because I know my center marks are aligned. So I start right here in the center. And I clip them, and then I work my way out. So I like to start in the center on the sides, the center in the front, and the center on the back. And then I work my way out from there, because I then know that it's right where it needs to be, and it'll be even. Sometimes if you're a little bit off, it will be wonky because you didn't get the, the center of it. And then you don't realize till after you're done. It'll look fine. And then once you get it sewn in, you may notice a little bit of items that have shifted a little bit and are not quite centered. The other challenge that you may have with this bag is that for the exterior, the seams are on either side, whereas for the lining, the seam is in the middle. So you may find that challenging as well, but you can do it. That was intentional. I was trying to shift the weight of all these seams for the machine. So since it is domestic sewing machine friendly, I didn't want all your seams and bulk in one place. So I've clipped everything around. This will come over like this. That will be my twist lock when I'm done. And then what I'm going to do, because remember I said I have this very odd machine, is I am going to sew mine. I'm going to turn my bag wrong side out because I have a straight stitch machine. You should be able to use your free arm to do this. So I'm just going to add my clip. Matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to stitch this closed when I get to the sewing machine. So let's go to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch around at 1/4 of an inch. So it gives you plenty of room. It won't be too fiddly. You won't find things rolling. 1/4 of an inch. You're going to stitch all the way around the bag and attach everything. Okay. And I will stitch my zipper end here closed only because I don't want the clip in the way. So let's go to the sewing machine. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is start with this. I'm going to stick it right over here. You can do 1/4 of an inch if you want, because the zipper end is very big. So I'm just going to stitch across, and I'm going to back tack across those teeth. And that's to stop my zipper pull from sliding off the end as I sew. So that's why I'm doing it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I will take this and I'm going to turn my bag wrong side out. Like I said, if you have a free arm, you shouldn't have to worry about this. I do not. So I like to stitch it from the other way, the wrong side, because I want my pretty stitches to be on the outside. And I find that my bobbin thread stitches aren't as pretty. So I'm just going to turn this right side out. I'm off camera, so you're not missing anything. And this would have been a lot easier if I did it without the clips, but alas, didn't happen that way. Okay. Now I start at a place, and I'll show you what I mean. I don't have to turn this like completely all the way out, but I start at a place where I know it's not going to show as much. So when you sew this, start sewing someplace where you're not going to see it. I usually try to start in a seam, but if you find that the seam that you're trying to sew into is too bulky, do not sew at a seam. So I hope that makes sense. Sew at a seam only if it's not bulky. If it's too bulky, do not sew at a seam. Sew a little away. You can also sew on the back, start at the back of your bag, because that's the part that's normally against your body. So you will not see that, right? So you will not see that. So I'm going to stick this in here. Excuse my arm. I did not totally turn it right side out. I mean, wrong side out. So I just want to make sure that I get this the way it needs to be. And I am starting, I have a pin in there, so I am starting away from the pin, which is holding it very securely. This is easier than it looks. So unlike you won't have the challenge of cameras and having to worry about cameras situation. So I'm just going to start in the back of my bag. Right where my pocket is, you can start to the left or the right of that pocket. I'm just, you may not see what I'm doing right away because I need to make sure that I get this flap down first, and then you'll start to see what I'm doing. So I pulled everything out of alignment when I turned it inside out. So 1 second. And I started the flap because it is the flattest part of the bag initially. So I'm starting there. I'm just going to, there we go. Okay. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So I'm at the flap in the back. I'm going to try to start on the side over here of the flap, but if I can't do that, I'll just start in the middle where the pocket is. Okay, I'm putting my needle down and then I'll drop my presser foot. Take your time doing this because you will have to adjust, readjust, adjust, readjust. So take your time doing this. You want to make sure you leave nothing behind. So don't have like the front sewn on, but the back isn't sewn and that kind of thing. So let's go for it. 1/4 inch stitch length of 4, 4.5. Take your time. I miss my free arm during these times. Oops. And you can take your clips out as you go along. Okay, I'm almost back around. I'm going across my second connector here. I'm gonna remember to take out this pin as well that I have holding it here. Okay, all done. So, hey Veronica, how are you? Finishing up the bag tonight. Almost done. We just have the strap and the zipper end to put on. So I'm turning it back right side out. It is, believe it or not, it's stiff, and it does have some structure because of the foam, the foam and the waterproof canvas. So you're going to give it a good iron. Now everything is the right side, so you can even iron a little bit on that. But there aren't really a lot of wrinkles in here. So that does, you can just steam it, but you can definitely iron it if you want. If I close the flap, that's what the bag looks like. It's my zipper pocket on the back. Like I said, I'm keeping this one for myself. There will be like a little V shape over here. That was intentional. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and notice how far down my zipper went. I'm going to pull this, but because I stitched it, I didn't have to worry about it. I'm going to get my zipper end, and it looks like this. And I'm going to need my screws, or one screw, and I'm going to need my screwdriver. And I will attach the zipper end. The way that I do that, there's a little screw that comes in here. Mine, I don't have one in, but yours will have one. And then what I do is I take my zipper, I fold, it's right side up. I fold one end under so that it's on the back. And then I fold the other end over so that it's on the back, just like that. So it looks like that. Then what I do is I will take my zipper end and I will just slide it over there. Some people do put a little, maybe a little glue. Like I said, I don't like messes, so I don't do that. So I will just stick this right in here and it'll shimmy on. If you start on one side and the other side, just shimmy it on. You can see it goes right on. Get it all the way on there. Now, what you can do is if you have an awl, because I know that sometimes you'll try to do this and you'll strip the screw head. You can use an awl and you can stick it right in that hole. You don't have to do this, but you can stick it in that hole just like that and work it back and forth. What that does is it separates your teeth so that the screw goes in easier. So if you don't have an awl, you don't really need it. But if you're finding over time that you're stripping the head, that's because it's trying to get through your zipper teeth and it's probably hitting them instead of moving around them. So it's, they're inexpensive enough, the awls, to get them on Amazon, and you can grab a couple. So now I'm going to take my screw, stick it into the hole, and then just screw down. If you're going to press down on your cutting surface, and I'm hoping I don't have to, I recommend that you put a piece of foam or something on the cutting surface so you don't scratch as you're screwing down, you don't scratch your hardware, because it does cause friction, and depending on what's on your cutting mat, you may do that. This is a magnetic screwdriver, by the way, so that's why the screw stays on. Okay, that screw's not making me happy. So I'll get another one that will make me happy. And you just hold it. I'm just holding it and screwing it in. And you just keep screwing it till it goes down. And I try to get it all the way down so it's totally flush. And I'm pushing. But it should be, when you're done, it should be flush right here. So you should feel nothing sticking up when you're doing that. And that's what it will look like. I don't know if you see that screws right in there. And that's my zipper end. which looks very pretty because it matches the bag. It's a pretty blue. I'm gonna stick that in there. And then the last part of this is to put on that strap that we made yesterday. So you're gonna grab your strap. We've already added on our slider. So the way that we're going to do this, make sure that your strap is straight. That's key. We can always try to untwist it, but we don't want to have to. So make sure your strap is totally straight, laid out on your cutting surface. And what we're going to do is, starting at one end, I'm starting at the right. The fabric side is facing down. I'm going to pass it through my ring over here. So your D-ring or your rectangular ring, whatever you're using, just pass it through there. My fabric is facing down. I'm then going to take the other end. Once again, make sure that this is straight. And I'm just double checking that it's all straight. Oh, actually, I should start on the other end. Apologies. Start on the right end. Bag is right side up. Start on the right end. Fabric is facing down, so I'm going it with the webbing facing up. I'm passing it from the inside of the bag, not the outside. And when I pass it around, you'll now see it's right side up. Pull it, make sure it's straight. You're then going to take your D-ring and you're going to hold it like this. You're going to pass it up through the right-hand side of the ring. I mean, the slider. I said D-ring. I apologize. The slider. Pass it all the way up. Pull it out. And then you're going to pass it down the opposite end. So there's two holes. So it'll look like that. Once you've done that, oh, that's okay, Veronica. Hey, Della. It's okay, Veronica. You can watch it on replay. No, believe me, food comes first. Food comes first. Thank you, Della. I'm actually liking it. I thought I would like it, but remember I said I'm going to wear it with jeans. So, or carry it with jeans. I don't know. Do you wear a bag or carry a bag? But once you slide it up, you can then tighten it. I'm going to pull it tight. Double check again, because we haven't sewn anything, that your strap is straight. On the other side, you're then going to pass it from the outside of your bag. It's right side down. Pass it through and around your loop and back, right? So it's going to make a little loopy loop. So it's going to pass this way. And do that for about like an inch. And I'm going to attach it the same way that I attached it to the D-ring. So I'm going to add a clip here on either side, just like this. All right, and that's the only part we're going to have to sew. And just like I did when I attached the slider here, I'm going to take one stitch going from across the short edge, 1/4 of an inch in, and then another stitch 1/8 of an inch in. And that's all I'm going to do. If you have rivets, you can definitely rivet it in. But this is a basic bag. I'm assuming you don't have rivets, so we're going to do that. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew those 2 lines in, 2 rows of stitches. I do turn it wrong side up. This is the wrong side because I need to see where the strap ends and begins. I always start with the larger seam allowance, which is 1/4 of an inch. I should have a stitch length of 4. I'm going to go forward, back tack. I go over the edge, by the way. And then I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch. So these are really just going over lines you already sewed pretty much. And I'm going to do the 1/8 of an inch. And I will do a little bit of cleanup now and come back off camera and do the rest. But I'm just going to cut some of these threads. Like I said, if you have a rivet machine or riveting tool, you can definitely, instead of sewing it, add rivets to this. Okay, so we've completed the bag. It's all done. A strap is on there. Put my little twist lock. It's nice and blue. And it's not sad. It's not making me sad. It's blue and I'm not blue. But all your pieces are on there, and that's your bag, all finished. Tonight, we did the lining, but because there's no pockets or anything, it actually came together very quickly. If you want to, you can always add in some slip pockets or whatever you want. I like the big open space on this one because I know how I'm going to carry it, and the crossbody. So review, lining, zipper, accent piece. We have a flap. We have a back pocket, which is magnetic closure. We have a zipper pocket, and we have an adjustable crossbody strap. So thank you guys so much for joining me over the last 3 days and hanging in there with me. Um, I need sound effects. So when somebody says hooray, I should be able to have sound effects. So I'm going to work on that, to add sound effects when we're done, and different things. So yes, hooray. Arnetta, you hung in there with me all tonight. So I had company sewing, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate everybody else who joined in, regardless of the time. It's always good to see names pop up, and I get to know each of you because your name pops up every time I do a live. So you may have heard me get a little bit excited when some people joined because I know them. And woohoo, Della. So yeah, and Della, put that rivet press to use. Use that rivet press. I'm excited to see what everybody's bag looks like. Once again, you can make it out of vinyl if you want to do the bottom in vinyl. And that was mentioned on day one. And I may do that. If I get 5 extra seconds, I may do that because that would be really cute, especially as a crossbody. And I'm sure whatever fabric you use to make this bag or material that you use, people will look at it and they'll love it and they'll think, oh my goodness, love your bag. Say thank you and let them know that you made it. Let them know that you make beautiful things. So thank you guys so much. Those of you who are in the group, I'll see you over there because I'm going to schedule some time to do some drawings for the monthly giveaway. I think we have 2 months to go through, and I will be over there doing that. If not this weekend, in the middle of next week, I will do that. So stay tuned for some more sew alongs. I have one planned, and I'm working out the logistics of that. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Bye bye.